So one of the reasons why we talk to you guys about science and why we teach science in general in schools is because we want you to know um, about different topics in science, and we give you, especially in science classes in high school, we give you a big kind of array of topics. We give you like the sampler platter where you've got a little bit of chemistry, you've got a little bit of bio, and some physics and etc. We give you a little bit of everything in the hopes that you find something that you're kind of interested in. The other reason why we do scientific education is because we want you to become informed, scientifically literate adults. And unfortunately, I think there are always going to be scientifically illiterate and very misinformed people in the world. It's one thing that I really take seriously in my job is trying to reduce that number the best I can by, trying to give you the atmosphere in which you can spot BS very easily. And so there has been quite a bit going around lately, in particular with respect to 5G technology. And it's really just a reheating of an earlier conspiracy theory or pseudoscientific theory that cell phones cause cancer. Turns out neither of these things are true. 5G has nothing to do with COVID, and cell phones do not cause cancer. But if you have a relative or one of your parents' friends is kind of into this fringe pseudoscience and conspiracy stuff, it can be really, really disconcerting, and it can be really, really hard to communicate with those folks. And I want to kind of clear the air about these claims, and I want to do it in a way that kind of hits some of the bullet points that we need you to know about in the electromagnetic spectrum in science class. So let's jump down here. This is the electromagnetic spectrum. It is a cool, nice full color, pretty good looking representation of it. There are two things that we care about in the electromagnetic spectrum. That is the wavelength of a wave, and the other thing is the frequency of the wave. Now, when we get into doing the math, I'll show you how to do wavelength and frequency. We'll talk about what they actually, how they figure into the wave equation and all that. But for now, I just want to debunk the whole COVID-19 and cell phones cause cancer stuff. Now, the reason why the word radiation scares the living daylights out of a lot of adults, particularly those who are kind of in their 40s and older, especially folks who might not have gotten a very good scientific education, is because when you say the word radiation to someone who's 60, they think, nuclear war. They think about harmful radiation. Now, that's because those folks lived during the Cold War. They grew up in the Cold War, and there was fear, in some cases very justified, that nuclear war could break out at any moment. I mean, it colored the society in North America, particularly in the United States and the USSR. Those countries came close to turning each other into glass by launching lots of nukes. And so, when you grow up in that kind of environment, it's going to change and modify the way you think. So when you say radiation to somebody, again, who doesn't necessarily know their science or may have forgotten it, they're thinking, okay, deformed babies and cancer and this, that, and the other, and radiation poisoning and gruesome effects. And while there are some parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that can cause that stuff, most of it doesn't. And so I'm going to just quickly walk through two big sections of the electromagnetic spectrum. So I'm going to divide the spectrum up with a little vertical line, and I'm going to throw it right about here. Boom. Okay, it moved over a bit. That's okay. So there are two main kinds of electromagnetic radiation. One of them is called ionizing, and the other kind is called non-ionizing. And the concept of ionizing, if you think about chemistry, which you guys know a pretty good amount about, ionizing sounds like the word ion. And if you think even harder, ions get made when electrons get knocked off of an atom. So ionizing radiation is a kind of radiation that can push an electron off of an atom or off of a molecule. And you can see all of the ones that are on the right side, all the ionizing radiations. We've got UV. We know that human beings should limit their exposure to ultraviolet light, particularly ultraviolet B and C, because those have higher energy. It turns out that as you go to the right of our picture, these are higher energy rays. You've got X-rays, soft and hard. X-rays, you're not allowed to just go to the doctor and get 30 X-rays just because you think it's fun. When you go to the dentist, you might have to get X-rays of your teeth, a dental X-ray. You might remember the last time you did that, they put a big lead smock covering your torso and your abdomen and your legs. There's a good reason why they do that. It's because X-rays are ionizing radiation. In other words, when an X-ray gets shot through your body, it can bump electrons off of molecules that your cells are made out of. And sometimes, if you have bad luck, and really this happens every time you get an X-ray, but you get so few of them that your body can heal and repair the damage. Sometimes the X-ray will run into part of your DNA. And when an X-ray hits your DNA, that can cause a genetic mutation in that cell. So ionizing radiation, these guys up here, these are the ones that can cause cancer. Ultraviolet, we know, doesn't go very far into the body, but people who have been exposed to lots of UV light have a much, much, much higher incidence or chance of developing skin cancer, because the skin cells get lots of mutations, and then certain kinds of mutations tend a cell and they put it down the path to turn into cancer. Same deal with X-rays. You don't want to get hit by those any more than you absolutely can. And then on the far end of the spectrum, we have the highest energy rays, which are called gamma rays. Gamma rays are very harmful because they don't just cause little tiny mutations if they run into DNA. If you remember the double helix of DNA, when a gamma ray runs into one of these, it actually will break that DNA molecule into two pieces. So these waves are destructive, and you really don't want to be around them. So how do we tell what's ionizing radiation and what's not? Well, this is a little bit beyond the course, but not a lot. Remember how I said ionizing radiation has the energy to knock an electron off of a molecule or an atom. It turns out that kind of the lowest energy that can do that is 10 electron volts. So this is like the bare minimum. Your electromagnetic wave has to be carrying at least 10 electron volts to ionize an atom. And you might be thinking, hey, aren't all the atoms different and aren't all the molecules kind of different a little bit? So do things have different energies that they ionize at? And if you're thinking about that, you're super smart. There are different kinds of materials. Some of them are easy to ionize and some of them are harder. The easiest and lowest threshold is 10. So many, 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 many other atoms and molecules have ionization energies that are greater. So we just say, okay, if it's above 10, we're dealing with something that is called ionizing radiation. So UVB lands right in that 10 or so electron volt range. So again, if there's a wave that is lower than 10, it's not going to ionize anything. And furthermore, it doesn't add up. That means that you can't say, well, what if I get hit by a microwave that's right here? Okay, cool. If you get hit by a lot of them, does it suddenly magically crack the 10 eV barrier? No, it just means you're getting hit by a lot of this. So the energy level here is 10 to the minus 3 electron volts. That is 10,000 times weaker than what would be needed to ionize certain atoms. So anything to the left of this line just doesn't have the punch to cause electrons to fall off of atoms or ions. And so we talk about 5G and cell phone radiation and Wi-Fi. All of those, well, here's FM radio. Cell phone technology and Wi-Fi is literally just repurposed radio waves. These guys live in the 10 to minus 6 electron volts. That is 10 million times weaker than what it takes to do an electron knockoff, to ionize. So right off the bat, these waves are so puny, they can't do anything to your cells. In fact, like when you are walking around outside, remember there are radio towers, and you can pick up a radio signal for different radio stations all across Edmonton. The waves have very long wavelength, very low frequency, and very low energy. And you are getting absolutely clobbered with them. You're getting hit by radio waves right now. Those radio waves just don't have the energy to ionize anything in your body. Cell phone, same deal. Cell phone, cellular tech is right around here in that area. Again, not enough energy. You talk about 5G. 5G is just a little bit higher in the radio frequency far microwave spectrum. It's around 10 to the minus 5. I did the math. I think 5G is 26 gigahertz. A gigahertz is a 10 to the 9. So we're talking about gigahertz. We're kind of in this range right here. And so the energy level of 5G is 10 to the minus 5. That is still 100,000 times weaker than what is required to affect the body in any really bad way. That said, if you were standing right beside a 5G tower, like if you were just right up against it, it would probably heat your skin up, because different things happen to different electromagnetic waves. Some waves are absorbed by certain materials, some waves are reflected by certain materials, and some are diffracted or refracted, bent or split up by different materials. The same way that you can shine light through a prism and it splits it into different colors of light. That's diffraction. So if you are standing in front of something like that, a 5G tower, if you were standing right in front of where the 5G signal was coming out of, that may have the ability to heat your skin up. Would it kill you or light you on fire or turn you into dust? No. But it might not feel so great. As an aside, there have been some military weapons that have been invented that actually use microwaves. And the interesting thing about them is if you shoot microwaves at somebody's skin unprotected, the microwaves will cause them, it will basically heat their skin very quickly and it'll hurt a lot. Will it kill them or cook them? No, but it will cause enough pain that they'll get out of the way. And some weapons have been made that will basically make somebody, like crowds disperse. So they've used this as a riot control thing. But even then, so people are freaking out about these waves. Guess what you're getting hit by just by looking at the computer or your screen right now? You're getting clocked by visible light. Remember, that's the only reason you can see stuff, is because visible light is being sent to us. Most of it is coming from the sun, because the sun gives off all of these different electromagnetic waves. Many of them get blocked by our atmosphere, thankfully. And thankfully, some stuff gets through. One of the things that gets through is visible light. This is going to seem pathetic and depressing, but this is the only part of the entire electromagnetic spectrum that you can detect with your eyes. You can see. We can't see UV, we can't see infrared, you can't see radio and microwaves, and I'm hoping that you're not looking at a gamma ray source. So amazing. Like, this is the little sliver of the spectrum that human beings get to see. We can feel other parts of the spectrum when our skin or our body absorbs the energy. But again, like, yellow light doesn't have the energy to knock an electron off of an atom. So if you have relatives who are a little bit wrapped up in the 5G causes the pandemic, or cell phones give you cancer, pardon me, you can explain to them calmly that the energy level of the photons or the electromagnetic waves or the electromagnetic radiation, any three of those terms works, the energy that these guys carry is far, far, far too low to affect your cells or your DNA or anything. So I hope that clears some things up.